In this episode of Cutsy's Claws and Crimecast, we'll be discussing a case that involves money, religion, and a new identity. But first, are you ready to be shocked and chilled to the bone? Do you like a good true crime story? Solved or unsolved? Well, you've come to the right place. On your way in, please hit the subscribe button, and if you like what you see, hit the thumbs up. Let's get started with today's case. Today's case is about John Emil List, born in Bay City, Michigan on September 17, 1925. He was an American mass murderer and longtime fugitive. On November 9, 1971, he killed his wife, mother, and 3 children in their Westfield, New Jersey home, then disappeared. He had planned the murders so meticulously that nearly a month passed before anyone suspected that something was amiss. Let's talk about some backstory before we get into the real story. John List was born in Bay City, Michigan. He was the only child of German-American parents, John Frederick List and Alma Barbara Florence List. Like his father, List was a devout Lutheran and a Sunday school teacher. He graduated from Bay City Central High School in 1943. That same year, he enlisted in the United States Army and served as a laboratory technician during World War II. His father had died in 1944, and after List was discharged in 1946, he enrolled at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, where he earned a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in accounting, and was commissioned a lieutenant through the ROTC. In November 1950, as the Korean War escalated, List was recalled to active military service. At Fort Eustis in Virginia, he met Helen Morris Taylor, the widow of an infantry officer killed in action in Korea, who lived nearby with her daughter, Brenda. John and Helen married on December 1, 1951 in Baltimore, Maryland, and the family moved to Northern California. The Army, recognizing List's accounting skills, reassigned him to the Finance Corps. After the completion of his second tour in 1952, List worked for an accounting firm in Detroit, and then as an adult supervisor at a paper company in Kalamazoo, where his 3 children were born. By 1959, List had risen to general supervisor of the company's accounting department, but Helen, an alcoholic, had become increasingly unstable due to syphilis she had contracted from her first husband, which she did not disclose to List before their marriage. In 1960, his stepdaughter Brenda married and left the household, and List moved with the remainder of his family to Rochester, New York to take a job with Xerox. There, he eventually became director of accounting services. In 1965, List accepted a position as vice president and comptroller at a bank in New Jersey, and moved with his wife, children, and mother to Breeze Knoll, a 19-room Victorian mansion located at 431 Hillside Avenue in Westfield, New Jersey. On November 9, 1971, List murdered his wife, mother, and 3 children using a 9mm Steyr 1912 semi-automatic and his father's Colt 22. While his children were at school, he shot his wife Helen, 47, in the back of the head, then his mother Alma, 84, above the left eye. As his daughter, Patricia, 16, and younger son, Frederick, 13, arrived home from school, List shot each of them in the back of the head. After making himself lunch, List drove to his bank to close his and his mother's bank accounts, then to Westfield High School to watch his elder son, John Frederick, 15, play a soccer game. After driving John Frederick home, List shot him repeatedly because, as misfire evidence showed, his son attempted to defend himself. List placed the bodies of his wife and children on sleeping bags in the mansion's ballroom. He left his mother's body in her apartment in the attic. In a 5-page letter to his pastor, found on the desk of his study, List claimed that he saw too much evil in the world, and he had killed his mother, wife, and 3 children to save their souls. He then cleaned the various crime scenes, removed his picture from all family photographs in the house, turned a radio to a religious station, lowered the temperature to preserve the bodies, and departed. The murders were not discovered until December 7th, nearly a month later, partly because of the family's reclusive tendencies and also due to notes List sent to the other children's schools and part-time jobs claiming that the children would be visiting their ailing maternal grandmother in North Carolina for a few weeks. Helen's mother was ill and had canceled a visit to Westfield because of it. Had she made the trip, List later said she would have been the 6th victim. List also stopped milk, mail, and newspaper deliveries. Neighbors noticed that all of the mansion's rooms were illuminated day and night with no apparent activity within the house. After light bulbs began burning out one by one, they called the police. Officers entered through an unlocked window leading to the basement and discovered the family's bodies. Westfield, which had few violent crimes recorded since 1963, received national attention as the site of one of the most notorious felonies in New Jersey since the kidnapping and murder of the Charles Lindbergh Jr. baby. A national manhunt was launched. Police investigated hundreds of leads without success. All reliable photographs of List had been destroyed. The family car, a green 1963 Chevy Impala sedan, was found parked at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York City, but police found no evidence that List had boarded a flight. Alma's body was flown to Frankenmuth, Michigan, and interred at the St. Lorenz Lutheran Cemetery. Helen and her 3 children were buried at Fairview Cemetery in Westfield. Breeze Knoll remained empty until it was destroyed by fire in August 1972, 9 months after the murders. Although the destruction was officially ruled arson, it remains unsolved with no suspects. Destroyed along with the home was the ballroom's stained glass skylight, rumored to be a signed Tiffany original, worth at least $100,000 at the time, equivalent to $750,000 in 2024. A new house was built on the site in 1974. In 1971, as the FBI later discovered, List had traveled by train from New Jersey first to Michigan, then to Colorado. He settled in Denver in early 1972 and took an accounting job under the name Robert Peter Bob Clark. One of his college classmates, although the real Bob Clark later stated that he had never known List. From 1979 to 1986, he was the comptroller at a paper box manufacturer outside Denver. He joined a Lutheran congregation and ran a carpool for the church members without transport. At one religious gathering, he met an Army PX clerk named Dolores Miller, and they were married in 1985. In February 1988, the couple moved to a house in Brander Mill neighborhood, Midlothian, Virginia, where List, still using the name Bob Clark, resumed work as an accountant at a small accounting firm, Madrea, Joyner, Kirkham, and Woody. In 1972, List was proposed as a suspect in the D.B. Cooper air piracy case because of the timing of his disappearance, 2 weeks prior to the airline hijacking. Multiple matches to the hijacker description and the reasoning that a fugitive accused of mass murder has nothing to lose. List was questioned by FBI investigators after his capture, but he denied any involvement in the Cooper case. While his name is still occasionally mentioned in the Cooper articles and documentaries, no direct evidence implicates him, and the FBI no longer considers him a suspect. In May 1989, after 17 years, 6 months, and 23 days, the crime was recounted on Fox television program America's Most Wanted during its first year on the air. The segment featured an age-progressed clay bust sculpted by forensic artist Frank Bender, which turned out to be a very close resemblance to List's actual appearance. On June 1st, less than 2 weeks after the broadcast, List was arrested at a Richmond County firm after a Denver neighbor recognized the description and alerted authorities. List continued to stand by his alias for several months, even after his 1989 extradition to Union County, New Jersey. Finally faced with the irrefutable evidence, including a fingerprint match with List's military records, as well as evidence found at the crime scene, he confessed his true identity on February 16, 1990. At trial, he testified that his financial difficulties reached crisis level in 1971 when he was laid off with the closure of the New Jersey City Bank. To avoid sharing his humiliating development with his family, List engaged in the same routine and dress as when he was employed, leaving home each morning on schedule and spending the day at job interviews or at the Westfield train station, reading newspapers until it was time to come home. List diverted money from his mother's bank accounts to avoid default on his mortgage. As the year progressed, the family's financial problems became more strained. List encouraged his children to seek part-time work, ostensibly to teach them maturity and responsibility, but in actuality it was to help keep the family financially solvent. He was also dealing with his wife's alcoholism and her untreated tertiary syphilis, contracted from her first husband and concealed for 18 years. According to trial testimony, Helen had pressured List into marriage by falsely claiming that she was pregnant. then insisted that they marry in Maryland, which did not require the premarital syphilis test mandated in most other states at the time. Though her health progressively deteriorated, she said nothing to List or her physicians until 1969, when a thorough examination revealed the condition. By then, progression of the disease, combined with her excessive alcohol consumption, had, according to testimony, transformed her into an unkempt, paranoid recluse who frequently and publicly humiliated List, comparing his sexual prowess unfavorably with that of her first husband. A court-appointed psychiatrist testified that List suffered from obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, and that he only saw two solutions to his situation: accept welfare or kill his family and send their souls to heaven. Welfare was an unacceptable option, he reasoned, because it would expose him and his family to ridicule and violate his authoritarian father's teachings regarding the care and protection of family members. On April 12, 1990, List was convicted of 5 counts of first-degree murder. At his sentencing hearing, he denied direct responsibility for his actions. "I feel that because of my mental state at the time, I was unaccountable for what happened. I ask all affected by this for their forgiveness, understanding, and prayer." The judge was unpersuaded. "John Emil List is without remorse and without honor," he said. "After 18 years, 5 months, and 22 days, it is now time for the voices of Helen, Alma, Patricia, Frederick, and John F. to rise from the grave." He imposed a sentence of 5 terms of life imprisonment to be served consecutively, the maximum permissible penalty at the time. List filed an appeal of his convictions on grounds that his judgment had been impaired by post-traumatic stress disorder due to his military service. He also argued that the letter he left behind at the crime scene, essentially his confession, was a confidential communication to his pastor and therefore inadmissible as evidence. A federal appeals court rejected both arguments. List eventually expressed a degree of remorse for his crimes. "I wish I had never done what I did," he told Connie Chung in 2002. "I've regretted my action and prayed for forgiveness ever since." When asked why he had not taken his own life, he said that he believed that unaliving himself would have prevented him from going to heaven, where he hoped to be reunited with his family. List passed of complications from pneumonia at age 82 on March 1, 2008, while imprisoned in the St. Francis Medical Center in Trenton, New Jersey. In reporting his death, the New Jersey Star-Ledger referred to him as the Boogeyman of Westfield. Over the years, List and his crimes have furnished inspiration for documentaries, television dramas, and feature films. Examples include Savior Season 6, Episode 16 of the television series Law & Order, the 1987 film The Stepfather, and its 2009 remake, the 1993 film Judgment Day, the John List story, in which List was portrayed by Robert Blake, and the character Kaiser Soze in the 1980 film The Usual Suspects. In 2008, John Walsh, the host of America's Most Wanted, donated the age-progressed bust by Frank Bender that played a pivotal role in the List's apprehension to a forensic science exhibition at the National Museum of Crime and Punishment in Washington, D.C., whose collection was later removed to Alcatraz East Crime Museum in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. In 1996, the episode of Forensic Files discussed the List murders. A 2003 episode of A&E series American Justice also detailed the case and featured an interview with List. And in 2015, the story was covered in the Season 2, Episode 2 of the Investigation Discovery TV series Your Worst Nightmare. The episode, Murder House, premiered on November 18, 2015. The movie, A Killer Next Door, based on the events that led to the capture of John List, was released in July 2020. In 2022, New Jersey Advanced Media released Father Wants Us Dead, a podcast serial on the events. And also in 2022, Netflix released a 7-part dramatic fictional miniseries called The Watcher. Although it was a complete work of fiction based on a real article, much of the character, John Graff, was borrowed from the story of the John List murders. The character, John Graff, played by Joe Manganiello, was identical to John List in several ways, such as being an accountant, attending a Lutheran church, and murdering his family members and a live-in mother, along with leaving music playing in the house and planning an alibi that would cause the bodies to remain undiscovered for several weeks. Talk show host and comedian Conan O'Brien stated on his podcast that he drove to New Jersey to attend List's trial while living in New York as a writer for Saturday Night Live. And this is what John List looked like when he was arrested. So there you have it. That's the story of Michigan-born murderer John List, who murdered his family, hid the crime, and then used a fake identity for years to get away, and he almost got away. So, let me know what you think about this. Have you heard this story before? Is this new to you? Kind of scary, you know. I thought when I started all this that I would have a hard time trying to keep finding, you know, serial killers, these scary murderers, creepers, etc., all from Michigan. But sadly, yikes, okay, we apparently have our fair share. So, like I said, the list is going to keep going on and on and on, giving me lots of material for more episodes. So let me know what you think, or if you have any questions in the comments. And if you haven't, on your way out, hit that thumbs up for me and subscribe. Get me out in that algorithm. All right, everybody have a great night. And until next time, Cutsy out.